The Corvallis School Board meeting for August 12th, 2021 is called to order at 6:55 p.m. Please, if you're willing and able, join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I would like to thank everybody who's watching us right now on the live stream on YouTube or recorded. And we apologize and thank you for your patience for the late start. Much appreciation for technology for working through the technical difficulties. It is to be noted that all board members are in attendance, either in person or over video. And also to be noted that due to the surge in very infectious Delta variant of COVID-19, there are increased restrictions, including wearing masks in public spaces, as mandated in the state of Oregon for indoor spaces. So we are speaking through the masks, and folks here in the meeting will be projecting as much as possible. And I want to also note that some of our board members might have their video on and off due to technical challenges from time to time. So with that out of the way, really thank you for joining us, and let's get started with school board member reports. Do we have any school board? Sorry, one more request as we start now. If you want to raise your hand just to be mindful of participants in person and virtually, please raise your hand using the platform to know who's in by the order. So do we have any school board members who would like to share reports? Vince?
Yeah, I'd like to share that the district has entered into a tentative agreement with OEA, with our teachers, and so it brings to a close a long stretch of negotiations. The board will recall that as we were going through, as we entered the pandemic, we had to enter into an MOU to figure out how we were going to actually do education in the district. And so that was all negotiated. And really what that ended up being was a collaborative process, teachers and our district staff working together to figure out all the details of how that's going to happen. And I just have to say, I'm immensely proud and appreciative of all the hard work that our teachers and our negotiating staff with the district. It's just been a lot of work to bring it all together. And so I'm really happy to make the announcement, and I'm sure the superintendent will probably talk a little bit more in his report.
Thank you, Vincent. I would like to note the appreciation for you for sitting on desk long meetings and for representing the board as a liaison. Any further reports from school board members? I would like to add briefly, I attended, along with several of my colleagues here, the trainings from Oregon School Board Association, OSBA, all the way from the basics of school board governance and roles and responsibilities to understanding how to empower youth voices and student voice, how to leadership on school boards, and also equity and how to advance and answer the equity question. Noteworthy that we were participating in 2 of those sessions. One of the sessions in partnership with Lee Gibbard, Executive Director of the Foundation, facilitating discussion around how foundations and school boards could partner with each other to advance equity. And the other one, along with Ryan and Marcian and Vince in your other capacity as well, thank you for your facilitation of the meeting. And we were presenting about the equity work and the journey that we've been through over the years, resulting and ending with the racial educational equity policy. So thank you for school board members who attended the meeting. And I would like to adjust presentations and trainings. And I want to also note the ongoing work with the Pockets of Color. Thank you for Shauna and Lou for your leadership as well with the Pockets. We've been working and empowering our colleagues across the district and across the state to support with professional development, advocacy, and making sure we can attend for the unique needs of our students of color and help all students thrive and survive during these really challenging times. So I'm really excited to be involved with that work. I'm happy to answer any questions about it as well. Lou?
I was just gonna say that I went to some of the Oregon School Board Association offerings in July as well, and really appreciated especially the legislative updates because we had so much going on in the spring, and to see what all passed and thinking ahead of how that's going to impact public education. I was just really amazed and also really appreciative of all the work that went into helping with the educational component of that for board members. And yeah, I learned a lot and look forward to future opportunities with OSBA, and also the work with the Member of Color Caucus that you mentioned, Sammy, as well. Looking forward to some of the work that's coming out of that to support other board members of color across the state too.
Thank you, Lou. Shauna?
Just echo that same gratitude for the OSBA trainings in being able to participate as a new board member. One of the things that I heard echoed from many voices actually across the state were other new board members who were stepping into their role and saying, you know, this was either maybe not what I expected, or I didn't fully understand what I was stepping into, or there's a lot of learning to do. And so hearing that really echoed across a lot of new board members, and being in that space of learning together really spoke to the need for just continued transparency with the community building with understanding of what school boards do and that process. And I really appreciated the learning I was able to participate in, as well as being welcomed into the Color Caucus to connect with school board members around the state. It was such a meaningful opportunity to network and connect, even beyond our community, to hear about some of the challenges and successes and other models that we might look towards. So I really appreciated that opportunity.
Thank you, Shauna. Therese?
Thanks, Sammy. I don't actually have a comment. We're receiving emails from someone who wanted to make public comment who says they don't have an ID to get in. And since there were a couple of them back to back, I'm thinking maybe someone hasn't seen that email yet. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention.
Absolutely. Thank you for bringing it up. And I'll make sure Julie will attend to it to give the public commenters the opportunity to testify. So thank you for bringing that up. Wonderful. Any further board member comments or reports? All right, seeing none, I would like to hand it over to Ryan for the superintendent's report.
All right, well, thanks everybody. I am excited to be able to introduce you to one of our new school administrators that are starting with us this month. So typically what we have done in the past has been in the boardroom, we've invited our new principals and administrators as well as their families to join us. Again, this is a little bit different than that, but I still wanted you to have the opportunity to meet each one of them, hear a little bit about them, and just really excited to have them joining our team. So I'm going to start with Emmett Whitaker. So Emmett will be an assistant principal at Corvallis High School. He has been a science and AVID teacher at Lebanon High School since 2013. And prior to that, he worked for 15 years as a senior engineer and program manager at HP, both here in the US as well as Ireland. So we're excited to have somebody with his expertise come and join our team. So with that, I'm going to let Emmett introduce himself.
Hey, thank you, Ryan. I can't share my video. It looks like I don't have permission. Oh, there we go. Great. So hello, everyone, and happy Wednesday. Delighted to be here. I'm very excited to be joining the team here in Corvallis School District. Coming to the end of week 3, something that's really struck me is the quality of relationships and collaboration that I've experienced, and I'm super energized about that because I think great things can come from it. I've managed to get to meet a lot of our students in summer school, and I'm really eager to welcome back staff, students, family. I'm excited about that, and I really hope I get the opportunity to meet you in person over the next few weeks. So thank you.
Thanks, Emmett. We have 2 new assistant principals at CHS. Our other new assistant principal is Jermaine Joseph Hayes. Jermaine, this last year worked as a teacher on Corvallis Online. And prior to that, she was a science teacher at CHS. She's been educator for 11 years, primarily between here and also Central School District, where she was a middle school and high school teacher in science as well. So Jermaine, if you want to introduce yourself, that would be great.
Hi. Hi, everybody. And thank you, Ryan, for the introduction. I have actually taught in a few places over the course of my life, including my home country of St. Lucia. And just like Emmett said, I am just really excited. When I came to the Corvallis School District 5 years ago, I just kind of knew right away that it was a place that I wanted to be. I appreciate so much the connections that I've made over the years with students. That's one of the reasons I got into education and have stayed in education. I just really know that when students feel seen in a very real way, that just makes all the difference in the world. So going from teaching into administration, I want to just keep that my primary focus, connecting with and seeing and affirming the students at CHS. And I'm just really pumped about our new team. And like Emmett said, it's been amazing seeing students in the building and staff, because I didn't have that last year. So yeah, I'm just really looking forward to the year, even though there will be challenges, some of which will be discussed tonight. But taking all that into consideration, I'm really looking forward to being part of the team at CHS. So thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Jermaine. Next, I want to introduce Nancy DeVille-Williams, and many of you know Nancy from her time in the district. This year, she's serving or continues to serve as the interim principal at Garfield. She's been an elementary teacher for, I think, 17 years across the levels at elementary, K, 3, and 5. And so we wanted to let her introduce herself as well.
Hello, everyone. I'm Nancy Davila Williams. Nice to be here. Thank you for inviting me. So yeah, I've been a community member here in Corvallis for over 40 years, which sounds very strange when I actually say it out loud. But I'm also a product of this school system as a person of color and a student navigating the Corvallis School District school system. So I'm proud to be a CV graduate. But I also feel that I have something to give back now. And I'm also a parent of 3 kids who are all students, 2 graduates from the CHS, high school. And yeah, 17 years in the district. And I think that I'm happy to have served in different roles at Garfield. And I'm extremely excited to have an opportunity to be the interim admin at Garfield. It's a wonderful community and very student focused, equity focused, and I'm really proud to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Nancy. We're excited to have you on our team. And as you've been on the team for a long time, in this new role. And then finally, Tracy Fisher. Tracy started her career as a teacher at Adams here in the Corvallis School District. In the last couple of years, Tracy's been able to mentor new teachers, which is a great way to learn and grow and really understand high quality instruction and what it looks like and how you help to support people to be strong educators. So we're excited to have Tracy in the role of principal at Husky.
Thank you, Ryan. And yeah, thanks for letting me join tonight. Just kind of echoing everyone else, I'm really excited to get started this year and join the Husky team. It's been great to be in the building while also watching our new building getting constructed next door and just seeing it, constructed a little bit more each day. It's just different every day. I've also had the opportunity to begin connecting more with our staff and families and students, which has been really wonderful. And I'm just really honored to get to serve this community. Just a couple other things about me. I'm also a mom, and so I have a second and fourth grader in Corvallis School District, and my husband Mike is a teacher as well. And so we're strongly invested in our Corvallis schools. So thank you for having me tonight.
Thank you, Tracy. We really appreciate it. And so again, it's exciting to have such great folks taking on these leadership roles in our school district. And it will be fun to watch them continue to develop in their leadership and to be able to see all the great things that happen for their students across our school district. So again, it's a great opportunity to be able to introduce them, but also for you to put a face with the name as we continue our work together, as we meet throughout the year, our SIP dinners and some of those opportunities to be together. Just wanted you to have the opportunity to meet our new team. Next time that we meet, we'll introduce you to our new district office directors and managers and that team as well. So we have a few more new members to introduce you to as we move into September. So I wanted to start with that tonight, with that highlight. Another highlight is summer school. So summer school just wrapped up at our high school level. It's continuing for one more week at our elementary and middle school level. Throughout the summer, we will serve approximately 1,000 students through summer school, between the programs of the school district, through Parks and Rec, through the Boys and Girls Club. It's been an opportunity for us to really work with some partners, and also for us to be able to provide summer camps and some of those enrichment opportunities for some of our students who haven't experienced them in the past. So it's been a really great opportunity. And again, you'll continue to hear more about it as we move further into the school year. Traditionally, it's been something that our foundation has funded. This year, those dollars came through the Department of Education. But the other day, I had the opportunity to do a tour with some foundation members and really talk about the fact that we were able to start from a place further along because of the relationship and the support the foundation has given year to year to help us to develop summer programming in such a way that it's been able to be a successful model for us to expand upon. And I think that that's been really beneficial, and that can be attributed to the foundation and the support that they've provided over time. So again, it's one more example of how the community has worked to support public education and how they do that in a way that helps us to move quicker and to advance what we're able to do for our kids. So again, appreciation for the state, for those funds, but also for the club, for Parks and Rec, for really taking on a key integral role this year. And finally, for the foundation and their ongoing support for summer programming. So it's been great. We do have one more opportunity coming up for families on August 24th and 25th. Line is calling. It's going to be a health fair. So between 2 and 7 on those days, there'll be hearing screenings, vision screenings, COVID vaccines, Operation School Bell, which is another partnership that we have that helps with school supplies and clothing for some of our students, as well as community agency resource tables, and then school registration support. So those are also a component of our summer programming. It allows us to, again, make connections with families and also to better understand as students come back to us this fall, what are some of the supports that need to be in place and how do we make sure those are happening. So again, it's a really important opportunity and one that you can also share out because it's open to all of our community and all of our students. And then also, as Sammy shared about the OSBA conference, it was great to be able to present alongside Sammy and Marcy Ann and have Vince as our MC. Again, because it allowed us to share our story as a school district and the work we've done around our equity work, talk about what has happened over previous years, and also answer some questions from school board members from across the state who are also trying to move forward in their own equity work as school districts. So I think it was a valuable opportunity. And again, we were well represented by Leaf and the foundation, and just talking about how the work that between school districts and foundations is so vital in allowing us to further the investments that can be made for students. So I wanted to mention that. Just a couple more announcements. One is that this year we're planning to, through the student investment account, to expand some of our middle school athletics. So for the fall, we're planning to add boys and girls soccer. So we'll have soccer programs for 7th and 8th graders that we haven't had in the past. And the same thing will be true with basketball during the winter. So again, it allows us additional ways to connect between staff and students and to build that connection between our schools and our kids. So looking forward to that happening. This is the first time we've been able to do that in a number of years. So again, those additional funds that have come to us through the Student Success Act or Student Investment Account have allowed us to do a number of things, and this is just one of them to highlight. And then also just a reminder, many of you probably received the email from OSBA, but it just highlighted the components of liability and also making sure that districts are following the guidance and directions from the governor's office, from OHA, and from ODE with regards to right now regards to masks, and in the future regards to whatever additional measures are put into place. We have an educational update tonight that Melissa and I will share additional details with you about the start of school. But I think it's always important to recognize that there are a number of factors that go into those decisions and expectations that need to be met. And that's one of those places where that comes from. It comes from the governor's office, it comes from the OHA, ODE, and it also comes from, our insurers. And then finally, when it comes to local control, it comes to decisions made on the operational side. So again, thanks for your support as we've made difficult decisions over the last 18 months, and we'll continue to do so. And so with that, my last announcement is that on September 1st at 8 a.m. we'll have our rally, our kickoff of the school year with staff. It's going to be outdoors at Broad Folk Stadium at CHS. So if you're able to join us, you're more than welcome. We'd like to, Julie will send out an invite just to get a confirmation if you're able to join us or not. But again, it's an opportunity for us to be together district-wide. We're doing it again outdoors and also working on making sure we're wearing masks and those other components to help keep people safe while also coming together in the community. So again, that's September 1st, Broad Folk Stadium at 8 a.m. So those are my main updates.
Great updates, Ryan. Thank you so much. And I would like to address each one of them, but we'll be out of time. I would just want to say thank you for the leadership and for the team's leadership and welcome aboard. Really great work happening and really great updates. Thank you. Team, any really quick questions or comments for Ryan? See none. Thank you for that. See none. We will transition to the public comment period, and we do have one public commenter as we get to admit them. I want to mention that public comment period is open through sign-up process that's included earlier today. And if anyone would like to be part of the public comment, feel free to sign up for the later business meeting. And in between, we always appreciate and value your inputs in any way, and you can always email the board using the information on the website of the school board, school district. So with that, we have Raquel Byers, and I apologize if I mispronounced your name. Raquel, can you hear me well?
Hi, thank you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you very well, and make sure you mute the YouTube. You're listening to us from the other platform to avoid the echo. I can hear you very well. Raquel, welcome, and I want to have you received the instructions around the public comments?
Yes.
Wonderful. So I'm not going to read it to you, but I will mention one thing is that you have 3 minutes, and there is a yellow and red lights on the screen. If you can see them, the yellow will be up when you have 2 minutes and 30 seconds remaining. And when your time is off, then when your time is up, the red light will go on. If you would like, when you have 30 seconds remaining with the yellow lights, I will make a brief note, if that's okay. Does that sound good?
Okay.
Wonderful. So feel free to start as soon as you want, and we'll start the counter after you say your name for the record.
Oh, okay. So you want me to state my name? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, please state your name.
Raquel Byers. It's just really hard to hear you. It sounds very echoey, so I'm trying to understand what you're saying. Did you, is that what you needed, was me to state my name?
Yes, and now you may start at any time.
Okay, now I can speak?
Yes.
Okay. Members of the Corvallis School Board, I come before you this evening to address an issue that involves the abuse of our children and the infringement and subversion of their rights as well as the rights of all humanity. Sons and daughters are the property of their biological parents until they attain the age of maturity. They are not the property of any state or body politic. Between January and February of 2020, Yale and Stanford universities approached the CDC and the WHO to inquire if either were in possession of a viral load sample of the genetic material of what they claim to be COVID-19. To this day, the CDC and the World Health Organization have neglected to produce said results, which in turn nullifies the existence of an actual emergency. In 1984, Carrie Mullis, a renowned biochemist, invented the polymerase chain reaction PCR test. The purpose of this test was to take an RNA imprint, lift it, and render an amplified scan of said extracted genetic material. In fact, if you sign up for an ancestral trace route like Ancestry.com or 23andMe.com, the test that they utilize to deliver said results is the PCR test. Mullis made it implicitly clear that the PCR test was not designed to test for infectious diseases or microbial strands. The PCR test is what is being used to identify COVID-19 and the so-called variant strains. Those are the facts. The point of this address is self-governance and preservation. If a person feels the need to wear a mask or get vaccinated to procure their safety and security, that person has said right, but must see to that themselves personally as they see fit. No single person, group of persons, or body politic has a lawful right to impose their ideals or convictions upon another by and through tactics of coercion fueled by propaganda. There is no we when it comes to health. Everyone's health is uniquely different, and personal preservation of such must be respected and not discriminated against. We've been granted a unique choice to take a vaccine and to wear a mask to preserve our personal health and safety. That same choice has existed since the foundation of our country. To choose to preserve life with self-defense or to choose to remain vulnerable to unknown and known threats, this is the first time in the history of America the boot of tyranny has forced Americans to protect themselves with a biological weapon and a shield or face consequences. If you are going to enforce such draconian mandates and orders that infringe upon people's divine rights and liberties, it is incumbent upon you guys to provide incontrovertible proof that is validated by unbiased, credible sources that an actual danger exists that would warrant the jurisdiction to exercise emergency powers and suggestive policy. And for your convenience, I do have 3 exhibits, which I will email to you guys. One is an official study done on the ineffectiveness of masks. The other states on the box itself that masks cause cancer, on the actual box that the masks come in. The other is direct from the CDC's OSHA page, which states that cloth masks and N95 surgical masks are not considered personal protective equipment. A recent study from the UK found that 99.95% of children recover from the coronavirus. More children die in car crashes and from drowning each year than from coronavirus. But you all sitting on the board today want kids to wear masks anyway, despite their health concerns. And now there is proof that masks are not only emotionally damaging to children, but can also cause cancer.
Thank you very much, Raquel. I appreciate you coming to share your thoughts with the school board. And we do have up to 3 minutes if board members choose to ask a clarifying question. Do we have any clarifying questions from the school board members? See none. Thank you, Raquel, and you may continue to walk us through the.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Have a good night. So seeing there's no further public comments, the public comment period now is closed. And I would like to move to the facilities bond. We do have a bond update, and I would just like to note a point for order. I would I will be mentioning some clarification probably following the educational update on jurisdiction regarding the mandates that we face, but I feel it's important to acknowledge that someone is watching us right now. We will be addressing the jurisdictions and what the school board can and cannot do. But with that, we'll move on to the facilities bond update, and we do have Kim and Dale with us. Welcome and thank you for being here.
Thank you for having us. So we have a video update today rather than our PowerPoint update. So Julie, could you run that video for us?
Corvallis voters approved a facilities improvement bond for Corvallis schools, which included safety and security enhancements, updates to our existing infrastructure, and career-related program expansions. The bond program included major renovations throughout the district, 21 new permanent K-5 classrooms that will replace 21 portable classrooms at our elementary schools, and 2 new buildings that will replace Lincoln Elementary and Husky Elementary schools. Now, at the halfway mark, the bond program is in high gear, with construction taking place at multiple locations. Middle school and high school athletic improvements and seismic projects were first up in our bond program in the summer of 2018. This included track resurfacing at all schools, athletic turf at the 2 high schools, and seismic upgrades at Adams, Jaguar, and Wildcat Elementary schools. Garfield Elementary was the first school project to get underway. Major renovations include an additional educational wing and covered play area. The front office and entry area will feature a secure vestibule and a welcoming bright space. Improvements in parking and site circulation will be safer for bikes and pedestrians. All of these improvements will be completed this fall. Completed renovations at Sheldon include improved accessibility at the front entrance, upgrades in the cafeteria, and a newly designed career and technical education STEAM lab. The Sheldon Library renovation, opening this fall, will be an exciting learning hub in the school. The second phase of work includes much needed HVAC work and seismic upgrades, which will go out to bid this fall for work next year. Crews are working at Crescent Valley High School on the career and technical education areas, the new elevator at the gym, fiber optic improvements, and the seismic upgrade project in the gym. Completion of most of these projects is scheduled for the end of this summer, with the seismic upgrade scheduled to be completed later. The Corvallis High School Career and Technical Education area is also seeing progress, with foundations complete for the covered walkway and work taking place in CTE classrooms. Later this summer, the steel structure for the covered area between the buildings will arrive. Additional solar arrays have been added to the existing school building in several locations. The new Husky Elementary replacement school is under construction on the east side of the current school campus. All of the structural steel and exterior brick is up, and the interior installation of mechanical, electrical, and plumbing is underway. Students will continue to attend school in the current building and portable classrooms this fall while construction continues. This building project is scheduled to be completed this winter, with the site work completing in the summer. Jaguar and Wildcat Elementary schools have a similar building layout, so the construction process is running on a parallel path. Improvements will include improved ADA accessibility, additional permanent classrooms and collaboration areas, a secure front office and entry, and the addition of a multi-use dining commons at each school. Both schools are in renovation mode, and the district is working with the City of Corvallis Planning Division to ensure spaces will be safe for the return of students in September. These projects are expected to be completed in 2022. Adams Elementary is scheduled for renovations to begin next summer, but we have moved ahead with an electrical project that will pave the way for successful construction that will start next spring. Improvements will be similar to Jaguar and Wildcat Elementary schools, and completion is scheduled for the summer of 2023. Design work and planning at Mountain View Elementary, Franklin K-8, and the Harding Center, the home of College Hill, is underway, with all schools scheduled to begin construction next spring. All of these schools have had active school and community involvement in the design process. And finally, the new Lincoln Elementary School. The new school is situated on the south side of the campus and was under construction while students attended school last spring. Immediately following the last day of school in June, district facilities and technology staff spent a week salvaging materials from the existing building, followed by abatement and demolition of the building by district contractors. The entire school site is beginning to take shape, with utilities, driveways, and sidewalks underway. Lincoln is seeing new finishes every day, with paint, ceilings, and flooring almost complete. The project is on schedule and the new building will be ready to welcome students this fall. The two-story, 69,560 square foot building is designed to the requirements of the Energy Trust of Oregon's Path to Net Zero program, which includes elements such as a thoughtful design process informed by our community, implementation of daylighting to enhance learning and energy efficiency, solar generation and battery backup for community resilience, expanded bicycle parking and multimodal walkways, water-efficient fixtures and separate metering for irrigation, and a building automation system that monitors, controls, and reports energy usage. A partnership with the Corvallis Sustainability Coalition will help us maximize solar potential throughout the district as part of their Solarize Corvallis initiative. The Corvallis School District is committed to working with our community to help set a course for a more sustainable future. The Corvallis School District is also committed to transparency about our stewardship of taxpayer dollars. We are proud of the high level of public participation that has taken place since the start of this work, from the Community Vision Design Guidance Principles to the Design Advisory Committees at each school. School design committees meet with architects and district staff to provide valuable input in the design process and include school neighbors, parents and guardians, students, and staff. We appreciate these community volunteers for sharing their unique perspectives as we develop designs for each school community. The last year has brought unprecedented challenges, including rapidly rising construction costs and delays in materials. The bond teams are working hard to mitigate these challenges. In addition, we are proud of the high level of involvement of businesses that are locally owned, or at least 51% owned, operated, and controlled by owners who are female, Asian, Black, Hispanic, or Native American. This represents a positive economic impact on our community. We are grateful to our contractors who have been working on this project throughout the COVID-19 pandemic. Despite the challenges, the district is on track to complete all of the bond projects with the available funds. While our timeline has shifted and our bond program will extend into 2023, we are pleased to share a scrapbook of the progress as we enter into the 2021-22 school year. Every step of the way, we have put students at the center of our design process. From flexible and adaptable learning spaces and our innovative designs for safe and private student restrooms to the solar-powered rooftops, our core values have been brought to life. We are excited to welcome students, staff, and the community into our new and renovated buildings this fall. We are proud of the work that has taken place thus far, and we are committed to continuing the tradition of sound fiscal decisions and careful stewardship of the public's investment.
All right, well, I'm in one of the new rooms at Lincoln Elementary School and excited to welcome students into the next school year in these beautiful new spaces. Thank you to the community for making it possible. Thank you, Kim. That was a great way to show all the work that's been going on, and to Megan and our communications department for putting that together. She did a fantastic job. And she even, I didn't know I was going to be in that video, so it was a little surprise to me right at the end. So there you go. But again, yeah, it's exciting to see all the work that's happening and the progress that's being made. It's just really a valuable asset to our community. So again, thanks to Kim and Dale for being here, and to Megan for putting such a powerful video together.
Thank you, thank you. I want to acknowledge the animation is my favorite part.
The excitement is definitely mounting with construction really coming together here at the end. So we did put a board update on the bond for all of our projects. Are there any questions regarding the board update, the bond update?
Do you have any questions from the board? Vince?
Well, I mean, my first note is just the transformation at the Lincoln site is just, it's awe-inspiring. And it's just, it really is hitting home how much of an impact that's going to be, not just because it's an amazing building and it's going to be a great space for kids to learn, but what an amazing landmark for South Corvallis. So just deep appreciation to everyone who's put work into planning that site. I know it was a tough one to plan out, and it's just going to make such a big difference for the community where I get to live, and Lou as well. It's just, I'm really, really pleased. The other thing I noted was the Sheldon Library. Wow, great work there, because that was a dark room before. But my question is more around, you know me, and I'm watching our reserve numbers, and I'm watching it get a little thinner and thinner and thinner as we're going through the project. And I'm just trying to think about, where are those areas where we're thinking that we may see some unpredictability? Where are those problems going to be cropping up? And I'm just trying to get, because we're getting to the end where we've done a lot of the design work, you've done a lot of the permitting work. Folks are going, starting to, go to work, actually doing the work in buildings. And it feels like at that point, a lot of the uncertainty is starting to come out of this bond project. And am I right in thinking that way?
Yeah.
Sure. Excuse me. Last month, if I recall, a month and a half ago, we reported some actual statistics, and I'm remembering that we're about 70% committed in our project costs. We have 5 significant projects to bid this fall, and our budgeting has included escalation to hopefully take into account some of these increasing construction costs. We will learn a lot over the next 3-4 months. And, we're being cautious with the remaining reserve funds in case the market does take us by surprise. Those projects are Adams and Sheldon Phase 2, Mountain View, Franklin, and Harding/College Hill. So we'll know a lot more later this fall.
Okay. And what are the areas of uncertainty that we have? I know that, 6 months ago, we were really worried about, materials was a big issue. And
sure.
And it feels like we're kind of going back into that place, maybe with case rates going up. We don't know what restrictions we're going to have. So I'm just curious, what areas of uncertainty are you seeing going forward? Maybe.
Yeah, I'm not going to predict the COVID number.
Okay,
but
I put you on the spot.
but I will acknowledge that the market is very dynamic. Lumber pricing, we saw it spike here a couple months ago into shocking new territory, but it's almost come back down to where it was. So that it's very volatile. We're seeing material delivery impacts in a number of areas. In this report, if I recall, we mentioned things like overhead doors being late. So when schools open, we're going to see some plywood covering openings. We're going to see a new covered walkway at CHS, and all you're going to see is the columns and the beams. You're not going to see any roof on it. So there's some areas that are impacted by the supply chain impacts. It's tough to even get manufacturers to provide precise dates of delivery these days where it was much more disciplined. So we're getting taken by surprise every now and then and have to react accordingly.
And I'm just going to say that the labor side of it is a little bit dynamic also. I know that in other areas we're seeing changes in the labor workforce based on the Delta variant even. And so it's hard to predict what that impact will be to the bottom line also.
Well, I have to say that, your past performance has been exemplary. I mean, there's bond projects happening all over Oregon, and we hear stories all the time, but consistently this bond team has come in on time and on budget. And when there has been adjustments, there's never been surprises. And so from a board member standpoint and a community member standpoint, I'm just really appreciative that, to have that level of comfort with this project. So thank you very much.
Thank you. We have Lily on bid 3. Lou?
A lot of what Vince said on just watching Lincoln has been so amazing, and it's like so close. And after the sad watching it crumble down, it got exciting to see it start to come into shape, and seen some lights go on last night too. So that was kind of cool to see some of the stuff. But it's not just Lincoln. Like every time I drive around town with my kids, we're always talking about all the projects going on, or if I'm taking them to summer class or whatever the case may be, and just remind them how much the community invested in all these projects, because I think it's important to the students know too, and kids in the community. So that's something I've been doing, and I think it's amazing to see how much the community has invested in the schools, and it shows how much the community cares. And I just really wanted to thank the community for that, and thank you all for all your work on it. One of the things that I've had community ask questions about is if they get tours at some point. So that was exciting to hear that there will be tours for the new schools, especially Lincoln, because even if people don't have kids, it's been in everybody's backyards for a little while, and they've also invested and just want to have a lot of pride. And so I thought that was really nice feedback too that I've heard from folk. And the other thing I did have a question about that I've heard from community has been about the salvaged materials, like what happens with those. And I don't know, I haven't checked if it was on the webpage, so apologies if it is, of where the salvage materials go that aren't being reused. So I know some of the beams and glass and stuff like that, I think got salvaged, and any other things that would be nice to have. So if you don't mind letting community members that don't know what's happening with that material.
Yeah, we did a announcement about that earlier, but we can send that out again, that the materials were taken off site and then they were gone through for recycling purposes and what could be broken down that way as well. But that did happen, it harder for folks to see. And then the other thing that I was going to share was that we are planning to do the tours. We're planning to do at Lincoln, as an example, we're planning to do a ribbon cutting while students are still in school. So our students get to experience that, but later that afternoon and evening, we're going to have tours for community as well. So trying to make sure that students feel that excitement and all kids can be there. And then also making sure that community gets a chance to see the spaces. So that's our plan right now. And we got some giant scissors that we're excited to use to cut a ribbon. So it will be a lot of fun.
Thanks, Ryan. There was like computer notification noises during part of what you said about the salvaged materials. And I know we send out announcements and stuff, but just for folk who didn't get the announcement, if you can. Thank you.
Yeah, so building materials were collected and sorted and taken off-site for construction material recycling. And that sorting happened mostly off-site, which made it a little bit less visible for our community. We did have building materials that were salvaged. So we took out, the facilities department took out things like fire alarm components and door hardware and intercom components. We took out paper towel dispensers and toilet paper dispensers and things that we could reuse throughout the district. So that is a big part of not only reusing, but recycling that happened, and cost savings even. And then from the construction perspective, they track everything. It goes through a recycling process. And then furniture and equipment that came out of the building, we assess it for safety and for reusability throughout the district. And those things that we deem that aren't usable in other schools or people aren't interested in from other school districts or community agencies, we are recycling those materials as well. We're breaking up metals, woods, plastics, and disposing of them or recycling them accordingly. And that's happening offsite as well.
Thanks, Ryan. Yeah, and thanks, Kim. I think that's really helpful for to know, and it also helps exemplify some of the community values and district values as well, and just how committed the bond project has been to upholding those. So appreciate it. And yeah, so thank you.
Another area that I wanted to share is that even, for example, at Garfield, where we had construction staging areas that required gravel put down, we're reclaiming that gravel for use in the future. We're not just sending it away. We're actually going to make use of those kinds of materials as well.
Thank you. I would say Our time is up for this segment, but I want to add, if there's no objection, 4 to 5 minutes maximum for Therese and Sarah to ask their questions or make their comments, and if there's any other board members, if we get extra time on that. So 4 minutes. Next up is Therese. Therese, you're muted.
I was muted when I told you that I was going to yield my time back because I could ask my question another way. So I'm going to yield my time back minus what I didn't when I talked on mute.
So I live near Garfield and live in a neighborhood that's been watching Garfield transform. And in the last week, there have been sort of outdoor neighborhood gatherings, and at both of them, people were in some of the neighbors that might have been more fussy about having construction across the street from them had very positive things to say about watching Garfield transform, and also are very interested in being able to tour the building. So I think the community excitement is high. And so I think enabling the people who enabled us to do these projects to see what they provided to our students, I think is going to be really important. So, but lots of excitement, even from people who don't have kids in school, watching the buildings go up. So it's been great.
That's awesome. Thank you. No further questions or comments. I want to just acknowledge what everything has been said. Kim and Dale, thank you. The report is transparent. You're communicating with us with transparency and clarity. And if I would summarize one message among all of that is you're putting students and kids at the center. And thank you for doing that and for showing that all decisions are going around what's best for the kids and how we can make sure we build those structures and buildings that will make our students successful. So thank you very much for your work. And with that, we're moving on to educational updates.
I actually need to take action on the pivot.
Oh, yeah, sorry. We do have another thing within the next 2 minutes. If there's any questions as well. Pivot architecture additional service request. There's a request and a motion suggested to you. So do we have any questions or a motion? Vince?
If the chair will entertain a motion, I would offer one.
Yes, could you state your motion?
I move to authorize staff to execute amendments to the professional services agreement with Pivot Architecture for Corvallis High School, Crescent Valley High School, and Sheldon Middle School for a combined total of $548,345.
Is there a second?
Second.
Was that moved? Yes. Been moved by Sarah. Been moved by Vince and seconded by Sarah. Is there any further discussion on the motion? All right, seeing none, we'll take a roll call vote. Vince, what's your vote?
I vote aye.
Sarah, what's your vote?
I vote aye.
Shauna?
I vote aye.
Therese?
Aye.
Tina?
Aye.
Louis?
Aye.
And I vote aye. Passes unanimously. All right, thank you very much. All right, now we're moving to educational. Thank you. And have a wonderful evening. Educational updates with Ryan and Melissa. I want to, if you don't mind, Ryan, I want to start with a clarification as people are tuning into SIT's context of this work. You've been providing those educational updates since the beginning of the pandemic. It's been very appreciated work. And I want to perspectives from folks who might be watching. First of all, as a board, we set policy goals, strategic goals, and budget, approved budget. And as a superintendent, you implemented those operational decisions that that deliver on those objectives and goals. And as we navigate really difficult times during a pandemic, there are so many operational decisions, including who should be wearing masks that are superintendent decisions. So I want to acknowledge you mentioning that earlier today. But also I want to acknowledge that we don't run in a vacuum. We have state law. There is a governor and Oregon Health Authority and ODE that are authorized by law to make some decisions and mandates that we have to follow. So with that, really, I want to acknowledge that your work, and as you present that work, that people acknowledge that there are some decisions that we do locally, and some of them are operational with the superintendents and staff. Some of them are strategic and policy with the school board, and we work collaboratively on those. But also there are some decisions that are made outside the scope of school districts, whether it's the board or superintendent. So I just want to clarify that since there's lots of confusion across the state and in some communities about that. So we want to make sure that's clear. With that, I'll hand it over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Sam. And I think one thing I would say that also makes it a little less clear is that it has been times where there's been more local control related to the pandemic and other times where there's been more state rules and action by the governor. So I could see how people may be confused by that at certain points in time. Right now, I see that we're moving. We attempted to move back towards local control, and I see that we're starting to move more back towards state guidance and state rule. And so it's something we'll continue to watch as we move forward. A couple of good examples of that are the mask requirements back in schools and educational settings, as well as in public settings now. So again, I think as change, that's something that we'll continue to see. And in terms of the educational update, we have typically done these monthly for the last year and a half. And this one is just providing you some context for the start of school, where things are now, and recognizing that things continue to evolve and change. I used to use that quote from Fauci pretty often about the virus setting the timeline. And I think that that's still where we're at. So that with that, Melissa and I are going to co-present and just go through some slides and answer questions as we go.
Awesome, take it away.
All right, thank you. All right. And Julie, you can go ahead and go to the next slide.
Okay. Not sure why it's not moving. Okay, hold on. Okay, hold on. Okay, I'll try it again. Not sure why it's not doing the same. Yes, exactly.
You want to share, when you share the screen, share the PowerPoint rather than share the screen?
Yeah, the whole desktop, don't share the whole desktop. So, can you share the whole desktop? No, share just PowerPoint. Just the PowerPoint, okay. I'm gonna try this again, sorry guys.
That's all right.
Oh, yeah. This,
Yeah, if you can move away the bar.
I don't know what's happening now. Oh, there you go. I think we'll just get going.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the first thing that we have here is it's first day of school is September 8th, and we're super excited to get back, and we're especially excited to get back to full day, full time, all of our kids in person. Kindergarteners will be starting on a gentle start schedule, and your schools will have some more information about that. But essentially, we're going to do a focus in the first 3 days of school with kindergarten families on visitation and getting to know the kindergartners before they walk in the door, and then doing some gentle start attendance in the second week. And we also will continue to have a fully online option, and that is Corvallis Online. So students would, our families would like to register their children for Corvallis Online. That is still an available option.
So again, since the beginning of the pandemic, student health and well-being has been our top priority. As you hear from us tonight, there are some additional steps that have taken place and on progress that's being made with regards to some testing components, as well as our ability to limit quarantine in some ways. And so those are some things that we'll talk to you a little bit about tonight that look different than they did even in the spring. But primarily our systems and structures that were in place last year were meant to allow students to stay in school and allow us to have limited exposure and transmission in schools. And many of those systems that were in place were vital and will continue to be in place this fall because they work. And I think that that's the important piece to share. They were successful for us in keeping kids in school. As you remember from the health department coming and speaking about Swiss cheese and the different layers of support, many of those layers of support will continue to be in place. And I think that's, again, an important piece for our families and community to hear.
So these are the prevention layers that Ryan's talking about. So remember the Swiss cheese model and how we put multiple layers of protection in place in order to keep everyone safe. And these are the 9 prevention strategies that we're going to be focused on this school year. The big 4 are ones that you hear all the time, and it's kind of part of our messaging, which is wear your mask, keep your distance, wash your hands, and stay home if you're sick. Those are our biggest rocks in these prevention strategies. The rest of this are things that we're going to be doing in the background, specifically like ventilation, contact tracing, and a lot of other things, just to make sure that we have all of those pieces in place of our prevention strategies. We're going to focus tonight on the big 4, masks, distancing, washing your hands, and staying home when you're sick. So that's what you're going to hear mostly about tonight.
And did you want to add a little bit before we move on about testing and just some opportunities that have become available for us?
Yeah, I think that it's really exciting. The testing that we're going to be able to do this year is pretty exciting. We were on a phone call this morning with our testing partner that we've connected with through Oregon Health Authority. We're going to be able to offer families the opportunity to do screening testing with their students at home. And we are going to be in a partnership with WVT, which is the lab that's downtown in the Baskin Robbins. So we're going to be able to deliver to families probably once a month a set of tests that they can use with their students at home once a week. They do the test at home, they can bring it into school, drop it into a container. That container will get picked up every week by WVT, and we'll have results within 24 hours. The focus is on our students who are unvaccinated, so especially our kids who are under 12, but anyone can do the screening, any family can sign up for it, and it is free. All of that is being billed to Oregon Health Authority, so families shouldn't feel any kind of concern that way about doing it, and it's just going to be one more step in helping us to maintain healthy schools, healthy classrooms. So it's very exciting. More information about that coming up.
Yeah, it's a really important piece, and again, something that we're excited to be able to have in place this year that wasn't even in place last spring. Again, as I feel like I've communicated a couple of times today about the new requirements and expectations that have been put in place through the governor's office. And I think the one thing that I want to share about that is that one of the things that is also different is around quarantining. And so when students are sitting 3 feet away, but they're both wearing masks, at this point, that's not considered a close contact event that would require quarantining if one of the students tested positive for COVID. What's important about that is that it means that those students will be able to continue to be in school and participate in school. And so we anticipate seeing fewer quarantines for the upcoming school year than we saw last spring. Again, again, we work really closely with our health department, with our school nurses when there were cases of COVID. And what we found is that those were happening primarily outside of school with very low transmission within the building. And so that's one of the changes that's going to be in place for this year. So again, we will see fewer quarantines, which will allow kids to have continued education and continued learning and fewer disruptions. So we're feeling optimistic about that.
And that quarantine exception isn't something we created. That's a CDC quarantine exception that OHA is also following, and it's in our ODE guidelines. The CDC did tons of studies and realized that when kids are 3 feet apart and they're both masked, they're not transmitting the virus. And that is why they're able to say that if that's the situation in the classroom, we don't need to quarantine kids that were nearby the student who was positive. So it is, like Ryan said, a great opportunity for our kids to not have to go home and quarantine at home for 14 days. They'll be able to stay in school. So we've talked about it, but we know masks are required. Our staff, our students, our contractors, and in this case, contractors means, you know, those folks that come on campus to do work in our classrooms, in our buildings, not necessarily like the construction guys, but it could be. But when they're inside our buildings and they're you know, walking around inside, they'll be wearing masks. The other thing too is the big change for this year with regard to masks is that we're not requiring them when students and staff are outside. So kids can go out to recess, pull off those masks in the 102 degree heat if it's going to be that hot, and play around outside without having to keep their masks on. So masks are not required when they're outdoors.
And then another component, which is something that we had in place last year, but again, using that safety iPass system, which allows students and families to verify any symptoms. It also allows the school to keep track in cases of quarantine and monitoring. The other thing that will change this year is, again, this won't be a requirement, but it will just help with the process, is that you can upload a vaccine card into that system. That's only shared with our school nurses, but it allows us to, when we have a situation where we need to consider quarantining, to have that information made available so we can make quicker decisions and be able to make the communication that needs to happen, but limit the communication to where it is needed the most. So again, I think the thing that you'll see in this theme is that our systems are becoming fine-tuned and more refined as we move forward. And I think that that's generally what I hope you hear from us tonight, is that that is the case as we're moving into the fall.
Students and staff are going to be continually reminded to wash their hands and wash their hands in the way that is you know, proven to be the most effective, which is the 20 seconds of soap and water or using hand sanitizer if they have to. So we will continue to remind staff and students to wash their hands and use that respiratory etiquette where they, you know, cough or sneeze into their elbow, and then make sure they wash their hands after that happens or after they blow their nose, all of that fun stuff that we have to think about. But yeah, respiratory etiquette and hand washing is another big part of this prevention layering.
And then we'll continue to use those same systems and processes where for hallways and passing. I know we've had some questions about that for our schools with larger student populations. And so, and it's especially when we think about middle school and students transitioning, because we have some students that are old enough for vaccine and others that are not. And so those systems continue to be priorities for us and maintaining those as we move into the fall.
So this doesn't have to do with the COVID strategies, but this is just really exciting news that we want to make sure everyone is aware of. And that is that the USDA has allowed for all children, no matter their free and reduced lunch status, all children will receive a free breakfast and free lunch for the entire school year. We're very excited to be a part of that program. We'll be sharing school menus again and doing the pre-ordering for our elementary, and all of cart purchases will still be available for students at secondary. But that's a very exciting part of what we need to do to, again, continue to have a healthy community.
And at our next meeting, we'll introduce our new food service manager. So again, we are excited to have students back in school. We're excited to start the school year. There's always lots of anticipation about that. And we feel that now with the things coming up soon, our new teachers joining us here in another week and a half. Our principals and administrators back with us who just completed a retreat. And so we just feel this ramp up of anticipation and excitement about having kids in school. And at the same time, we're going to make sure that we'll continue to follow these processes and protocols and continuing to follow the guidance that is set forth for us from ODE, OHA, and the governor's office. So with that, we're happy to answer any questions folks may have.
Thank you. Do we have any questions from board members? All right, let's start with Therese. We have a virtual applause from Vince. So Therese, Lou, and then Sarah.
I'll take it, Vince. It's okay. Thank you.
Therese.
Thank you. Thank you for providing that overview. I have a question that I don't expect you to answer. So I'm just putting it out there to know that it's on my mind. I'm guessing it's probably on the minds of other individuals, but obviously a lot remains unknown about what will happen. How prepared does the district feel, given our experience of this past year, in the event that we need to pivot and move to an entirely remote system again? How much infrastructure do you feel is already in place to support that change? Compared to, say, the first time we had to end up doing that, where we didn't have much to work off of. Yeah, that's it. What's your confidence level on what we have had in place and our capacity to get back to meaningful distance education if we need to?
I would say technically we have the infrastructure in place. Emotionally, I have real strong concerns about that. This has been a challenging 18 months, and as the leader of the district who tries to do my best to encourage folks to move forward, I know that will be a steep mountain. So that honestly, I have greater concerns about that than I do about our ability to pivot, because we have some incredible people who've been super adept at that. And so I have no doubts about our ability that way. So I guess I know it was rhetorical, or you didn't want an answer, but that's what my heart tells me.
I did not want an answer. I just didn't want you to feel pressured to come up with some 5-point plan on the spot. I wanted to just convey that I was really speaking more about the spirit behind that. And I appreciate your honesty about the emotional toll that could take, and the need to, that honestly, the infrastructure for the educational piece probably is there. That would be a much harder transition. I want to express that I have a lot of confidence in our district leadership that we're not going to go there if any other viable option feels presented and available to us. I also want to appreciate it. I want to communicate my appreciation that as a district, we recognize that we are part of a larger community, we're part of a state, and that our state leadership has made a request about a way to try to move our entire state forward. I appreciate that it is not the purview of the board to make that decision. It is an operational decision, and that rests with the superintendent, the assistant superintendent. I'm appreciative as a parent that you are choosing to put your energy into making this a successful endeavor, rather than the alternatives that we could be spending our energy on. So I appreciate that. And when we move forward in this, I don't have any doubts that if there's a way for those doors to stay open to in-person learning, you guys will do it. My hope and my appeal to parents and other community members is that we will see the invitation to do our part to make that as easy of an option for you as we can, by taking as many preventative measures as are available to us and providing as much cooperation, and in the spirit of recognizing that nobody wants to be doing it in this exact fashion, but everybody wants our kids to have the best possible context for learning. It's an untenable situation. It's one we never would have I mentioned all of your careers never ever thought you would do. I'm guessing all future superintendents will take a pandemic course in their training because it is obviously here. But I think you have done a really great job with that. And I encourage the community, please, to consider that there is not a one size fits all solution for every single need that could possibly emerge. We have to do our very best to distribute the time and the energy and the resources we have to create the best and safest learning environment for our students. And I appreciate your leadership, and I feel confident you can do that. And I too hope that we do not have to have our children at home again for so many reasons that I will not take time to share with you right now.
All right, thank you, Teresa. We have LaHoy, Sarah, Vince, and Tina. We have 5 minutes on the schedule, but we'll give it as much time as it deserves while still respecting the other items on the agenda. So Lou, Sarah, Vince, and Tina, and Lou.
Just first, everything Teresa said, bunch of underlines, and yes, please, we all need to do our part here. I have a few questions, and most of them are yes or no, so yay. But one of them is something that came up actually from one of my kids who has never been to high school was, can second year students, this feels like a operational across the board, can second year students that, like, there would be first graders in elementary or 7th graders in middle school or sophomores in high school, is there any like transition stuff for them planned for the ones, especially because not everybody went back to school last year? Is there anything planned for them? And if not, it's okay, but it was just a yes or no.
Yeah, at this point, I would say that it's a great idea, and it's something that we should continue to talk about over the next couple of weeks. It has not been part of our plan necessarily, but it is a really good idea.
Okay, yeah, like specifically, she was like, "Can I go to orientation with everybody?" And I was like,
Yeah.
"Okay, sophomore." So
Because her orientation was online, right?
Yeah, because she's like a new student, so yeah.
never been in the building really. And then the other one is, can families switch to Corvallis online later in the year if they're in person, and vice versa? Can they switch to in person if they're in Corvallis online?
So we are, so Corvallis Online is a school this year. And so we are trying to limit the transitions that happen. So we would look at transitions happening more at quarters and semester rather than at any date and time. And that would be a system of working between the school, the Corvallis Online principal, as well as the other school principal, and looking at some of the factors that go into that transition. Because we want it to also be thoughtful and mindful, and we don't want additional curricular gaps that could happen. So we're that's the way that we're setting it up.
Awesome, thank you. And you said in there that there was low transmission of in the spring between, like, in the buildings. Is low like pretty low, or was like, I know a lot of people are are curious about that. That's why I wrote it down, since you mentioned it. Like, just, I know that's a big question mark for lots of folk, is like, what does low mean?
Yeah, I'm aware of one situation.
Okay, great, thank you, that's helpful. And then
Low,
extra low, that's great. Hopefully it stays that way, right? And then you had a thing about the emails that go out about the badge pass, which is super cool, unless you have like a bunch of kids to do them for. But does the app replace those emails? This is just like a very specific, like, if people have multiple kids, because they're gonna have to like do multiple badges for them. Is it?
Yeah, our superintendent complained about the same thing, having multiple kids and getting multiple emails every day. So
I'm with you, Lou.
So we have a really great relationship with the iPass, which is the app developer. So that's something we can bring up to them about. If parents can opt out of the emails but still certify their students on the app. So
Okay.
because all the email is just a reminder, hey, just go in and do it. So you can do it on the app. So we'll talk to the developers about that and see.
Great, thanks. I love the app. It's just a lot of them to fill out if you have multiple kids, but thank you.
All right, Sarah, and then Tina. Sarah?
Yeah, unmuted. Yeah, this is very exciting. I am one of those parents of an 11-year-old who will be in middle school next year. And probably because I'm in that position, I've been hearing from other 11-year-old parents who are really concerned about that group starting middle school this year. So things like the testing and putting that in place, I think is really helpful. Do we know when information will go out to families about that?
So we plan to start rolling that out that week. We're going to have that health fair that Ryan was talking about earlier, and that family health fair will have representatives from the testing organization there to help parents to figure out how to create a presence for themselves online so that they can use the online presence in order to attach their kid to a barcode so that we can do testing. I just until like this morning, I had a slide for the principals to train on this, and it said more information coming. And then Erica and I had a meeting this morning with the company, so we're learning, and we're going to get that out as fast as we can in a message that is clear, consistent, and correct. So it's coming.
Yeah, great. And Ryan just answered one of my other questions about how low is low transmission, because I know that's another concern that those 11-year-old parents are having. And I just want to say, I went down the rabbit hole of the OHA website last night, which takes data down to zip codes and vaccination rates and transmission rates. And our community is doing very well on vaccinations, but we are not done. So as we talk about this as a community bringing us, enabling our kids to go back to school, I would encourage anyone who's listening who is not vaccinated to please go get vaccinated. If you still have concerns about the vaccine, please talk to your doctor. That is the best source of information you can get. And the more vaccinated people we have in the community, the safer it's going to be for our kids to go back to school. So please do that.
Yeah, my question is, I've heard from many parents about the projection of rise in COVID cases in the local area, and they're wondering if you would use cohorts or assign cohorts to mitigate having to go back to remote learning.
So cohorting is part of that, the layering of layering strategies. It's easier in elementary school. It's harder as they get into secondary. So we're looking at cohorts by classroom. And what we've learned from ODE and OHA is when you pull back on one of the strategies, another one needs to kind of come to the surface to kind of take care of that. So with the mask mandate and the which gives us that ability to not quarantine as many kids, that kind of reduces the critical importance of the cohorting, which we were really focused on last year. And so it's kind of dropped down as far as importance is concerned, but we have all of these other layers of strategies in its place. So yes, and so we have some, elementary schools are easily cohorted by classroom or grade level. It's a little bit harder when we get to the upper grades. So we're just going to do a very good job of contact tracing, knowing which kids are around other kids, and making sure that we're taking care of exposures that way.
I think the other thing that gets more difficult about cohorting for secondary students is that we've done that for a year. And as you think about the process students need to acquire or take to get a diploma, it gets harder and harder to make sure that they have the courses needed while they sort of have limitations on a full schedule. And so that's another factor.
Vince, do you have a quick one?
No, I yield back my time. I can take my answers offline.
Thank you. I want to acknowledge all this work is really extraordinary. Thank you. OHA is funding the testing, is that
Yes.
correct? That's wonderful. So really thank you for working on that and making it happen. It takes a village really to raise a child, and that's what we're doing. A wise man once told me about the sacrifices of our children that we're making to protect the elders and the community at large, and it's time now for us to sacrifice for the children. So thank you, Ryan, for just putting that into perspective. And you shared that with me just a few months ago. I can't remember, but it feels like yesterday, and it feels more relevant than ever right now. I feel it's time for me to sacrifice, whether it is my dining indoors or the inconvenience of masks, or having a conversation with doctor if we want to get vaccinated and we're not sure. We want to make sure everybody survives this. And most importantly, we want to make sure our kids get the learning they deserve. In person, 5 days a week, full time is the commitment, but we cannot deliver it alone. We are not in an island. So we were counting on the other counties, other neighbors, and on each other. So let's make sure we sacrifice as much as we can in order to empower our students to be in person as much as they could. Knowing from this presentation right now that we're putting so many layers to protect our kids, but there are so much layers we can put and still we can't operate in vacuum. So if we have an extreme surge, we might end up in a situation I don't want to even talk about. But we want to be ready, and thanks, Therese, for asking that question, and thanks, Ryan, for that honesty. Our kids want to go back to school, and our educators want to do it in person. And for that, it takes everybody of us, including friends like me who don't have kids of their own, but understand the impact on the whole generation if we don't make sure that everybody is protected. So with that, let's wash our hands, wear our masks, and do all the things that we've been told, and have a conversation about vaccines if we haven't been able to get the vaccine yet, to make sure we get it or we get the resources to learn more about it. With that, thank you. Yeah. Any further comments on this? See none, we'll move on to the next subject, renaming schools, Husky, Jaguar, Wildcat Elementary School. For the record, these 3 resolutions in front of you are as for first read for the public to review it and for board members to provide feedback. In the packet, there's a report that Superintendent Ryan shared with us earlier and presented us with the recommendations in context about the names, and the resolutions are the formal way to enact those names. So with that, is there any input, Ryan, you want to share, or should we start with feedback from the board?
Yeah, I think we could go ahead and just jump right into feedback from the board.
Right on. Board members? All right, we have Sarah, and then Tina, and then Vince, and then Lou. Sarah.
I am thrilled we're able to vote on these resolutions today. I had the opportunity to talk to a student at a teacher from Wildcat, and she shared how energized her students had been investigating the people whose names had been proposed, and how much excitement there was among students about this idea of renaming their school, that the kids are really excited about it and are using it in our schools as really powerful learning opportunities. My one thing that I would like to see added to the resolutions, if possible, is in the information that we got back from the academics at OSU about Bessie Coleman. One of the things that I found really interesting and inspirational about her was that she had made efforts as she went to France to get her training and educated herself to be able to do that. She made efforts to ensure that people coming behind her, that other Black people would have opportunities for education and training like she had worked so hard to get. And because we're naming a school after her, I would like to see that acknowledged in the resolution about her name.
Thank you, Sarah. And we're taking this, Tina.
So in the renaming of Husky for Bessie Coleman, it is stated Bessie Coleman was the first African-American woman to earn a pilot's license. Bessie Coleman was also a Native American, first Native American to earn, and I was wondering why that wasn't put into the resolution as well. I think that's just important to acknowledge.
And next up is Vince, and then Lou and Shauna. Vince?
I don't have any revisions to offer. All I have is appreciation for the process. It's really, this is a big moment. It was about this time last year when the board took up this resolution. And so, you know, and then I commented on what it meant to me personally. My lived experiences of a white man. I'm a veteran. And so I've been raised to revere presidents and their achievements and hold those things close to my heart. And so this was not an easy thing, has not been an easy thing for me to do. And even tonight, I still feel some difficulty with it. But I realize that this is a crucially important thing to do. We have heard so much from the community. And that's what I most appreciate is that this process has been slow, deliberate. I have deep appreciation for the work of the task force and for Director Whitebear, who is the liaison to the task force, and just taking the time to have this conversation with our community. I think it's a standout example of how to do this type of work. It's absolutely essential. And I hope that other districts in the state will do it as well. So much appreciation for the work that everyone has done to bring us to this point tonight.
Thank you, Vince. Lou?
Yeah, like Vince, I'm just like really happy to see us get to this point, and know we will have future conversations, but just so much appreciation to the community input, because that list was pretty long to narrow it down to these three. And so all the input that was received, it's just shows how excited a lot of the community was about being engaged in the process as well. And I think it reflects a deep level of that commitment that the community has to our schools. And I think that's really awesome. In another capacity of my life, I was able to take a tour of the future site for the Letitia Carson legacy spot. I apologize, y'all. It's legacy project, not spot. And I couldn't help but think of all the amazing possibilities that the combination of that coming online with the name potentially us voting yes on, which I hope we do, but and I was like, that's going to be so cool that there's that local connection that can offer a lot of opportunities. And it made me think about the connection with the tribes, with Catherine Jones Harrison too, and how many opportunities that opens up for some community engagement with the schools and some perhaps offsite learning opportunities as well. So I just wanted to mention that. And I did have a couple of revisions, and one of them Tina already mentioned was about Bessie Coleman being the first Native American woman pilot as well. I think that's really important. According to all the information we read, it feels like her Black identity was her most salient identity with her racial and ethnic background, but she was still a Native woman as well. And I think that needs to be highlighted. And I would suggest that in that paragraph, let me pull it up actually. Sorry, I should have had it pulled up already.
The paragraph on Bessie Jones or Colin. Yeah,
It's on page 1, it's the last whereas, where it says respect of the historical and contemporary contributions of women and African American women. I would suggest putting something in there along the lines of contributions of women, then like comma, especially African American and multiracial women, to honor that piece, because I think that will speak to a lot of the identities of students and families that are from multiracial backgrounds, to highlight that specifically. So I think that might be nice to see in there. The other revision is for the Catherine Jones Harrison one. There's probably a few more on this one, and sorry if you just heard my dog snore, because she did.
We did.
it needs, this is just like an educational and revision thing. That's why I didn't email this one in, is anytime you use the word indigenous to describe people, it should have a capital I. And there's like actually APA, is that the right one? Yeah. The journalists people that have guidance around capitalizing the I and why it's important, because it's referring to people, not like the plants or something like that. And the same with the use of tribal in reference to sovereign nations, the T should be capitalized. And so in this instance, because we are talking about sovereign nations, the T should be capitalized in tribal. And then the other part is that we should use the full names of the sovereign nations as well. So the Confederate Tribe, it's really long, I understand, but at least for the first use. And then if you want to use the acronym, so like the Confederate Tribes of the Grand Ronde Community of Oregon and the Confederate Tribes of Siletz Indians, that way it's their name as they've defined it for themselves. And to honor that part. So those are the only two. And oh wait, there's one more, sorry. The part for Catherine Jones Harrison, it's in the middle. It's where she is one of the first leaders of the contemporary tribe who led the Confederate tribes. Those ones, I think it would be good if we put that she was an instrumental part. That way it doesn't take, because it was a group led effort, and to kind of highlight that she was a part of that leadership. I just want to make sure we respect the other folk who were involved with those restoration pieces. That was it. Thank you.
So instrumental part in leading, right? Something like that.
What was that?
Instrumental part is related to her leadership
Yeah, it's the fourth whereas from the bottom of page 1. It says like, and one of the first leaders of the contemporary tribe who led the Confederate Tribes Siletz and Confederate Tribes of Grand Ronde through restoration. I was just suggesting that we say she was one of the instrumental people involved with.
Okay.
Yeah, that way it doesn't focus on a single person because it was a group.
Yeah, thank
I
you.
can work with Lou offline to make sure that the wording is right, and then on both of those, Lou and the ones that.
Sounds good.
Awesome.
Okay.
Awesome. Wonderful. Thank you. So yeah, we'll be in touch offline to make sure we get the wording right. And Shauna?
Just wanted to add, as a parent, it was so rewarding to learn along with my daughter when she came home with the list of names they had voted on at Jaguar, to learn about historical figures that some of whom I had never heard of, and to see her excitement for being a part of envisioning what new names in her school could be, as well as not just learning about those specific names that ultimately were chosen, but a whole long list of historical figures in Oregon and beyond. It was just such a wonderful activity to engage in as a parent and in our family, as well as in the community. I was a Hoover Husky growing up. I went through Hoover. And when I reflect back on my own childhood there, I could have told you at the time that Hoover was a president, but I couldn't tell you much more about him. And so I'm very, very inspired as well about some of the emails we're starting to get from the community with ideas for community engagement projects around the names who are being honored or moving forward with a vote, who will be honored with these name changes. And I think that's something we really need to center in this work, is looking at not just changes in name, but changes in action, in engagement, and how we really learn and honor figures and role models in our community. So I'm excited about that. I'm excited that the community is already thinking about that and is already proposing ideas for partnerships and that type of engagement. So I'm really inspired to hear and see that. The one recommendation that I have for board members and school district leadership to consider is that in the very first paragraph, the resolution talks about physical, political, legal, economic, and environmental harm. And I think because this is the field that I come from and the field that I study, there's no mention of the social and emotional well-being, mental health damage that can be done when racism and systems of oppression are present around us. And so looking at how we might be able to add social and emotional well-being or social and emotional harm to that list, as just recognizing that aspect of harm that can be done. And I'm happy to help with language ideas as helpful.
Thank you. Yes, thank you very much. That's great. Any other comments or feedback? I honestly, when Vince and Lou, we talked about this the first time, I told you, I'm not sure if we're gonna get reelected, I'll be honest and transparent. I knew it's going to be hard, going to be difficult, but it felt right, and it is right. Because I think we want to make sure we protect our kids and keep inspiring them and tell them that while we acknowledge and learn from history, we recognize the ideas and the names, and we highlight those who really will push us forward to be more inclusive, respectful of everyone, and believe in the potential of every child. And I'm reminded of the children who testified offline or online to us and shared their feedback with us. So important to remember that this is centering the kids. And while many of our schools are named toward presidents, some of them with good deeds and some of them with huge harm, especially to communities of color and indigenous and Black, we need to acknowledge it's very common for our children to learn about presidents and know that they can one day run for president, or they can one day run for state or even local civics and community service. And that's great, and they can see those examples. But right now, we're giving a message to the community that, and to our children, this generation, for generations to come, that you could be a Black, Latina, Latinx, Arabi, whatever background you come from, and you still can claim that this is your community. You still can see on one of the schools a name that is recognized that looks like you and is not looking only like one race or one gender. These are three names of three women. The first time we name a school that is not for a person that's not a man, and that's important recognition. We're telling our children that there are physical and real life proof of people who you could be like, whether you are a person who's denied from your ambition to fly and go to France to learn how to fly and then soar to the skies and claim that as your right and build a trace for other people to be able to follow and footsteps for other people to follow. You can be an indigenous person and contribute to recognizing not only one but two nations and claim the land and the right to that is yours. And you can be a person who's denied by law to own a land, still own your land in Corvallis, in this community, and be respected. So for those examples, we're telling our children, the sky is not even the sky is the limit. And we can all be celebrated for the good deeds and good things we do. And I am really excited about that potential and that message that's going to outlive us. And I'm hoping for generations to come, we continue to examine our biases and our privileges and recognize those names that haven't been recognized before. With that, I'm really excited. And for the record, and for those who are watching, we're not voting today. As my fellow board members mentioned, children's schools already know those names and recognize them, and they're telling us about them. They're excited. So on the second read, we intend to vote on it with the edits and modifications that board members provided. So is there any further comments on this subject? All right, seeing none, I want to just acknowledge Julie and the task force, Lou, Ryan, and the principals and administrators and staff. You've been doing lots of work to help with this project. So thank you for your work. And I want to acknowledge that there are so many people, and of course, Melissa as well, under your leadership. And I want to say so many people who have been behind this work. So thank you for this work. And I'm excited for more to come. All right, on that, if there's no further comments, We have a resolution number 21-0801, call a measure election to submit to the elector of the district the question of authorizing a 5-year local option levy renewal. Do we have a presentation or just a report that was shared?
We have the report, and then we also have Olivia present to answer any questions that you have. I think she provided a lot of detail in the packet regarding the local option levy, as well as a motion for you to be able to work through and discuss tonight.
Thank you. And for the record, this is a levy that has been going on since 2006, and it has been renewed every time since. Fund about 10% of our budget and 85 equivalent, full-time equivalent of teachers and staff. So really important element of our finances is funded through this levy. And we do have 3 questions or comments. Lou, Therese, and Sarah. Lou?
I was actually raised my hand before you started to hopefully take a 5-minute break. I don't know if that's asked,
Why
but
my hand is up also. I would like to take a 5-minute break.
All right. If there is no objection, let's take a recess for 5 minutes. And my clock shows 8:40, so we'll be back at 8:46. We are in recess. Okay. Team, we'll do an extra 5 minutes if that's okay. Oh, we're good. Never mind. We're good. Okay. Never mind. We'll get started in shortly. All right. We're back from recess, and Sarah, your hands are up. Is up.
Yeah. First, I want to thank Olivia for that report. I've had people ask me like how the levy was, how the amounts were decided, and I had this vague understanding of compression, but not a detailed one that I could easily verbalize, and now I can because I read your report. So thank you very much. I will be a more informed voter because of reading your report. I guess that's really all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you, and I want to acknowledge that as well. It's been a really great report from beginning to end. It gives a context of where we are, why we rely on the property tax partially for funding our public education in the state of Oregon, all the way into the need for this levy renewal. So thank you for presenting that, Luke.
It was just a thank you to Olivia. That was like super helpful, and hopefully it's helpful for the community too. I just wanted to highlight a couple things is how important this is as an investment for the future of our community, and how it's been another long-standing commitment to education of youth in the community. And I think I've said that several times tonight, so I'm like having a bunch of feels of how much the community loves the kids in our district. And this is just another example of that. And I did want to point out too, something that's in there is that it's not asking for anything more, but it's still able to maintain the level of support needed. And I think that says a lot too, because a lot of times, just because things go up all the time, there could be an ask for there to be a larger investment. And I know there's caps and all involved, but I think that that's important, because sometimes there's a misconception is that more is being asked for when it's actually the same amount.
Thank you. Vince?
I'd just like to add, because I'm the old guy on the board and I remember way back when. So this option levy has been a hallmark of education in Corvallis for some time. It really, separates. And as you look at school districts across Oregon, you can see a difference in what school districts can do, whether they have an option levy or if they don't. And if they don't, it's just harder for districts to be effective because of the way we fund schools here in Oregon. And so I'm reminded of comments of my colleagues back when I first came on the board, how this option levy provided resources that allowed the Corvallis School District to be much more resilient in recovery from the Great Recession. And I would imagine that, the same is true. We're in the middle of a pandemic, and it is allowing us greater flexibility than other districts that don't have this funding to be responsive to the needs of our children. It is really an important part of the work that we do. And we as the board are stewards of this option levy. And we get every 5 years to renew this. So it's just absolutely essential. The report is amazing. I'll say thank you as well to Olivia for a wonderfully detailed report that provides, really important information for the community to understand, just how Measure 5 and Measure 50 impact funding for us. So, and then I'll yield back.
Thank you. Does anyone wish to make a motion to approve this item? The motion wording is in your packet. And if you would like to propose different wording, then what is in your packet, please write it before you read it entirely.
I would be delighted to make a motion.
All right.
I move that resolution number 21-0801 be adopted to call a measure election on November 2nd, 2021 to submit to the electors of the district the question of authorizing a 5-year local option levy renewal.
Is there a second?
I second.
Was that Therese? Is second by, moved by Vince, second by Therese. Is there a discussion on the motion? So I would like to give a context of what this motion means and possible next steps for not only the board members, but for the community at large. This motion places ask to renew the levy on the ballot. And now, as soon as we vote on this, if we vote in the affirmative and the question will go to the ballot, it becomes a question for the community to support or oppose. And I would encourage the board, if you're inclined to write a resolution as an endorsement, we could have that resolution and communities could be in support of the levy, could use the language and the wording that we do as a collective board in endorsing, and they could use that in the voters pamphlet. So we could choose to endorse a measure as a board. So that's number one. Number two, political action for us as school board members in our personal and individual capacity. We could campaign in favor of the measure, but also the community as well are invited to do that. So please feel free to reach out. Please do reach out if you would like to support this measure. Ask us questions. The district should be an informational source, an unbiased informational source of what the levy is and what does it mean. But for us as board members and for the community, it's up to us to really educate and share the information about the levy and support it and do the community action needed to pass it in the November election. So with these two items on in terms of context, I fully support this and intend to vote for it. And I encourage my colleagues to do so as well. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we'll take a vote on the motion. Director Tomini?
Aye.
Director Baker?
Aye.
Director Adams?
Aye.
Director Jones?
Aye.
Director Whitebear?
Aye.
Vice Chair Finger McDonald?
Aye.
Chair Adrubbo votes aye. The motion to call a measure election to submit to the elector of the district the question of authorizing a 5-year local option levy renewal is unanimously passed. Thank you. All right, consolidated action. As a reminder, the items under the portion of the agenda are for action. Does anyone have a question about anything in consolidated action? For context, if you would like to pull out an item to discuss it, so let's mention which items you would like to discuss, and then we'll go over them one by one. So is there any items you would like to pull out for discussion from consolidated action? Seeing none, does anyone wish to make a motion?
I move to approve the items in consolidated action.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All right. I'll go with unanimous consent. Is there any discussion on the motion? We'll go with unanimous consent. If you object to the approval of the motion or the motion, please say nay. Is there any objection? The motion passes without objection. All right, consolidated information. As a reminder, the items under this portion of the agenda are for discussion. Also, I would like to say we will not be discussing the online curriculum items tonight. Please submit your questions to Julie Catala by Monday, August 16, so that staff may be prepared to answer them at our August 19th special meeting. And also, I would like to mention that we do have access to the curriculum, the online curriculum, until that date. So feel free to, if you would like to access the curriculum, continue to do it, please do so. Would anyone like to discuss any other item in consolidated information? Vince, Lou, Therese, and Sarah, please mention the items first, and then we'll go over them. Vince?
Okay, so I have non-licensed personnel, item, what is it? 11A, and then policy BCBA, and then that cluster, it's the disaggregation of JFCJG. It's item 6, but anyway, you know what I'm talking about.
Yes. All right. Lou, is there any additional items you would like to speak to?
Policy EFAA. And Vince said both JCF and JG, right? Okay, yeah. And here.
Therese, is there any additional items you'd like to speak to?
Sorry, hold on.
Sorry.
Oh, there we no, I am unmuted. No, that's everything. Everything I want to pull out has already been named.
Awesome. Sarah?
Nope, my things have been pulled out too.
All right. So let's start with Vince, and you know the disclaimer about non-licensed personnel information. We could not discuss specifics or conditions. So what's your discussion item on item?
I can't talk about specific people.
Ryan, help me out with
I'm just going to memorialize some people. That's all I'm doing. I'm just commenting.
That's okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Grudgingly. So the first person I'd like to recognize who's departing the district is Garrett Ross. That it doesn't mean a lot for a lot of the people for the board because you don't get to work with Garrett, but I've spent the last year and a half working with Garrett in negotiations. He has worked in the HR office and has also always been precise and cheerful in his work and a delight to work with. So I wish him all the best as he heads into whatever he's going into. Another person I wanted to recognize was our board secretary this year. It was Parker Schultz, and I wish them the very best. They've done a great job this year, and just all the best to them. And then Brenda Downham, who has been an institution for me in the community and in the district. The whole time I've been on the board, has been just a wonderful staff member to work with, has been just cheerful, helpful, available, and has been just a great mentor for me in learning how to interact with the public and be effective. So thank you, Brenda, for all that you've done for Corvallis and our children. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak to point agenda item number 8? Seeing none, we're moving to policy BCBA, students representatives to the board, first reading. And for context for folks, the package is available on the school board agenda and material meeting. So you could review the policies as we discussed them. So who would like to speak about BCBA? Please raise your virtual hand. All right. And we have Therese, Lou, and then Vince.
Thanks, Sammy. I'm glad to see that this topic has made it to us in terms of a discussion about policy. I would like to see a more robust policy with a few more details called out. So I'm not sure, I want to put that out there and I guess ask if other board members similarly are interested in that. And then if so, you know, can we work to help give some feedback and make that happen? Because I think it's a bare bones as it is, but I think there's great potential for us to form it into something that would make a statement about the value of student voice in our district.
Thank you, Therese. Lou?
It was really similar. It felt like it needs some more like the importance of it, of having the students voice on the board. And there was a couple, well, there was a typo too, but that was just on a capital S in representatives at the end, right before the single line. So the second paragraph, last line on the second paragraph. That's. Sorry, Erica, what was that?
Got it. I changed it. Thank you.
But I had questions like, do we need to clarify if students can make motions or second motions? How are they selected? How long do they serve, especially if they're taking an oath? Those kind of details I think would be really helpful for students to know what they're getting into and for them to have that kind of education of how they're even being selected for the board. Or, I mean, I'm sure we know that, but it's not in the policy. And I think that kind of stuff would be really helpful.
Yeah, thank you, Lou. And I would like to add that as a context, while the policy stipulates that they do not vote, making motions or seconding motions is important to clarify, especially that there are some boards, apparently ESCs, that have appointed board members who cannot vote, so they can make motions. So maybe clarifying that and delineating it would be good.
Yeah, and one thing just to know is that there's a little variation between the schools and how students are appointed. So I think there are things we can tighten up, but it's also we want to maintain some flexibility. So I think we'll come back with some additional language, but also kind of have that in mind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you. Vince and then Therese.
So my comments are similar to what has already been said. To get to that level of detail, I think that it would be important to actually include the student representatives and include student voice in the development of this policy. So that would be my suggestion, is maybe taking a little more time with this to actually have the affected population included in the decision making.
Right.
And then I also had another comment that we need to think about our procedures. There's going to be, once with this policy is adopted, there's a whole bunch of procedural components that in our meetings that we're going to need to re-examine, and our board practice. I think our hearts are in the right place, but I think we struggle with our practice a little bit.
Yeah. Thank you. Therese?
Just Vince said my point about, or the point I was going to make about involving students. I think it would be optimal if we could invite back past participants to contribute to the conversation, given that they have actually navigated the processes. I think they would have some good feedback for us. I also would like to see an opportunity, and maybe the policy is the place to capture that, for the student participants to contribute to board feedback about what is the experience of working with us, because they're here and they come and they do this great job, and they bring all of this, the rest of the world of Corvallis, into the boardroom for us. I don't know that we really invite them as much to reflect on the experience of working with us. I think we could learn from them. So somewhere in this policy, as part of the responsibilities or opportunities for students, would be something maybe akin to the board evaluation that we do. Is there some way that they can provide actual feedback on the processes as they experience them throughout the year? They leave us and they go on and they do amazing, great things, but then they're not here anymore. And so we don't really have that chance to reflect with them. But anyway, I think it'd be great if we could invite some back and include them in the process, so that we aren't just leaving student voice up to people who don't yet actually know what they've signed on for, but to hear from those who've lived what they signed on for.
Wonderful. Am I missing any more hands up? So I'm getting the spirit of this discussion and this feedback, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that deliberation, getting this policy right, is more important than getting it as fast as possible. And also, I would understand probably the selection process for this year either took place or already taking place. So the intention of it is, let's get that policy right, regardless when we vote on it. It could take some time, which is okay. Am I getting that right? Say no if you don't agree. So with that, we'll move forward with this feedback that you provided. Thank you. And make sure to email Julie if you have any extra thoughts about that. I would add one more thing, especially Ryan, with the context that you mentioned, probably giving us a little bit of context of the uniqueness of our each school and the program, so we understand how it happens operationally, and still keep the policy where it should be.
Yeah,
But it gives us a little bit of context about that flexibility and why it's so important.
for sure.
Wonderful. Awesome. Lou?
Yeah, and I just was gonna mention, Ryan, that I don't think we need necessarily each school's how they select a representative or how they're selected, more that it's not like appointed by the board or chosen by the principal, you know what I mean? Like it's decided on by their peers, stuff like that, where it's really clear that we're not the ones appointing them, or how, that's what more the essence of how they're selected, not necessarily the details.
That's good clarification. Thank you.
Yeah. That's awesome. Cool. Any further questions or feedback or clarifying questions from staff about BCBA? See none, let's go to board policy EFAA, District Food and Nutrition Services, first reading. Is there anyone who would like to speak to that? Please raise your virtual hand. Lou?
I just really love anything that has to do with like providing more like resources for students and agreements and collaborative work. But I did have a question about, I was curious of why that first paragraph was taken out. That talks about why the policy is important, basically. So that was my question, is like, because it's saying the why of the policy right there, like the value around how providing nutrition helps students learn and all that kind of stuff and provides opportunity. So that was the question.
I don't think I have an answer. I just know that that's kind of how the template came to us. So if that's something that's important that we would like to put back in, that's absolutely something we can talk about.
Yeah, and just sometimes the questions allow us just to go back and ask the question.
Yeah.
And this is probably one of those.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, it was just a curiosity thing, because I think it's a nice statement of like the value of like the value of having access to food and the impact it has on positive educational outcomes. So yeah, thank you.
Awesome. Now, any further questions or comments on EFAA? See none. Now we'll go to the package of board policy JFC/JAG being rescinded, and JFC student conduct and JG student discipline being adopted first read. I'm not going to control which one is which, but if you're if you're referring to a specific one, just for consistency, say the one being rescinded or JFC or JG. So we know which one we're referring to. Vince, Lou, and then Sarah, and then Sean. Vince?
So my first question is kind of on the whole thing is, why are we breaking these apart? They were combined, I forget, some years ago, and now they're being broken apart again. I'm just curious, what's the reasoning behind that?
Erica?
So what I see that at some point, the board combined these policies, and I'm not sure why they were combined, but I got the new versions from OSBA, and OSBA has them as two separate policies. And so just to keep it clean with what the OSBA has as their samples, I pulled them apart for review.
Okay, I'm good with clean. I understand. My next question is more nebulous, and it's around student discipline. And I'm just curious, as I was reading it, I didn't see any mention of restorative practices with regard to discipline. And I'm not sure that this policy aligns with our practice in the district. And so it seemed very, well, I'm gonna speak badly against my employer. It seemed very OSBA to me. It seemed very boilerplate and didn't seem to fit the approach of the Corvallis School District. And so, I mean, I'm surely you've made adjustments, but I'm wondering if there's any way that we can incorporate those types of processes that are restorative, where there's reconciliation is an expectation for our discipline processes. And I'm a little at sea. I could have gone in and wordsmithed, but I didn't do that. And if that's something you're interested in, I'd be happy to help, but that's my feedback.
And so what my only response to that is, of course, this is just kind of the policy. And then what we do in practice is another document that our principals have that we work through that lists, you know, the multiple steps that we go through with students when things, big, serious, you know, behavior incidents occur on campus, what we're doing as far as assessing their behavior safety level, or, you know, are they a threat to themselves or others? And then taking a look at safety plans and how we can, you know, obviously get back into the classroom, which is always our goal. So that's kind of the practice piece, where this is more the, you know, the policy piece. So with this is all aligned with state law and what it is, you know, what are the categories for for misconduct, and every one of these have their own policy on what happens. But what we've done in the district is created those kind of practices that we do on the ground in the building that look different than what you're looking at in the policy. Not different like against the policy. I'm saying they're more in that thoughtful line of restorative practices.
Alrighty, thank you.
All right, Lou?
I had a similar question on JCF new. That one is, I understand how things are operationalized in practice may not be reflected necessarily in the policy, but this is also really, I feel like, centered on, oh wait, no, that's the wrong one, just kidding. Scratch that. But I'm talking about JG at this point, because that's what I was reading the wrong note. JG new. I was wondering if there's other forms of discipline as well. And even though it's in practice differently, I think it's really important to say that in policy, that there are, because it's really focused on suspension in schools. The policy is heavily focused on suspension. And I think it's worth at least mentioning that there's progressive steps or something along those lines. And it doesn't have to give every detail, because it varies from the different schools and the grade levels. And then it's getting really into the super details of the operational, but at least having it in there that suspension isn't the only form of discipline used by the district might be helpful.
We did something similar to that with the threats of violence policy that we looked at last year. So we can kind of use that as a model. It was more, you know, it was broad, but it was talking about those practices.
Yeah, so that way it's like people aren't like, this is all that happens, because if it's not what happens, I could see how people do rely on policy to see if it's aligning with what their students are experiencing too. So that might be something to think about. But for JCF new, are we doing both of them at the same time? Is that right? Okay, so for JCF new, I'm really curious as to why the OAR 581, the all students belong violations were not included in that, because there's a lot of things listed as far as like, if you violate this law or statute, there's I can't remember where they're at. It's basically our policies, but there's no mention of that one. And I don't know if it's because it's new and it hasn't made it into like OSBA recommendations yet. But I don't know if that's something that needs to be included, because it is really specific. So yeah.
Which OAR?
The 581, the all students belong.
Do you have the rest of the numbers?
Oh, I have to Google it. But it's the all students belong ruling that, just, you know, when I'm talking about, right? Like we
yeah.
And so I think that, yeah, that's all, because it's violated. That's like, it's really specific on hate symbols and speech, or maybe not speech, but symbols. And
okay.
And what? And restorative practices, which is part of that. Yeah.
Right. So I would say, sorry for interrupting, Lou. I would say they changed the name with the law from all students belong to every student belongs. And we do have currently a policy that might change eventually with LSBA. I think it's ACB, the one we passed. So I would say probably we need to double check if they need to be cross-referenced or at least acknowledging any possible contrast between these two. Am I right about ACB?
Yes, you are.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, sorry about that for saying the wrong name, but of that ruling. But it is, I don't know, it just seems like it should be mentioned in here, or at least whatever policy it's landing in for us, that policy be listed in here.
Thank you. Sarah, Shauna, and then Therese. Sarah?
Yeah, I agree with putting more details into policy. I think operational things at school levels can be changed, but policies, if we value taking steps towards restorative justice, then I think it's harder to change that if it's in policy. The other thing, when I was reading JC, the sentence about I don't know if this isn't really a policy issue so much as something that really made me uncomfortable. But the sentence about the district shall consider the age of the student and the student's past pattern of behavior prior to imposing suspension or expulsion. A while ago, I asked for a report about our discipline practices in the district and bias to make sure that we don't have structures in place that are disadvantaging some students, and that behaviors in some students are being interpreted differently than they are for others. And I feel like real investigation into whether there are biases, what systems we have in place to prevent biases as we're interpreting students' behavior is really important as we're using those histories of behavior to decide on things as serious as expulsion or other disciplinary actions. So it's not really a policy change so much as if we're passing a policy like this, we need to make sure that we have systems in place so that discipline is something that is a fair and equitable process in our district.
Yeah. Shauna and then Therese.
Thanks, Sammy. I have some notes that I'll try to be quick about that are similar to what some of the other school board directors are bringing up, as well as a couple of other things to layer on as well. As I was reading through these policies, what stood out to me was some of those same things you were referring to, Vince, in terms of the language not necessarily feeling like it fit some of what we see in practice, or Melissa, as you were saying, that those restorative practices come out more in practice rather than in policy. And it would be great to see that reflected in the policy so that when folks are going back and looking at that policy to guide those practices, that's really there. And as I was reading through, some of what stands out to me is that, of course, there are behaviors that are illegal and harmful and those that we can't condone or tolerate, but also looking at how do we center the humanity of the students who are being reflected in this policy around them being learners, that those who are in these positions or who are having serious behavioral challenges or showing aggression or other kinds of conduct problems that we are not tolerating or not allowing in schools, and rightly so, what's being put in place to really help them learn. And I know that the discipline policy is talking about that, but it very much so focusing on it from the student disciplinary perspective. And I'm wondering about the addition of language that brings in families, partnering with families. Parents are mentioned in terms of informing them from handbooks or policies or what's acceptable, but it might be nice to see some language around how are families being partnered with and how are other needs of students being taken into account, including the educational environment and the role of educators in that relationship building, that learning process, that restoration process as well. So those are a couple of the things that stood out to me as missing from these policies. Thanks.
Thank you. I have Sarah and then Therese and Tina. Sarah? Actually, Sarah, if you're okay, we'll go Therese and then Tina. Therese?
I just have a couple of, many things have already been mentioned. I have a question just about the use of a couple of terms. So the policy says, let me read it here. The policy references sexual crimes using force, threatened use of force, or force against incapacitated persons. And I'm just trying to understand what is meant by limiting this particular statement to sexual crimes using force. I can't wrap my head really around like why we're specifying that as if there are not other. So is this calling that specifically? What about the sexual crimes that don't involve use of force? Can you speak at all to that?
I would have to pull up the actual references. I'm assuming the reason the language is like that is because it's probably drawn directly from an ORS, but I can look at those really quick for you.
Yeah, that would be great. I want to make sure that we don't have a policy that then doesn't capture the other potential crimes, acts of violence that wouldn't fall under the definition of use of force. And then I'm just curious about the references hate and bias crimes. So is there maybe it's in here and I just missed it, but what's the definition was being used to govern what defines a hate or bias crime? And who makes that determination that it fits that category?
We have a bias definition in policy ACB, so that could be that cross-reference that we were talking about before with something else. So that's where the definition of bias comes from, and that comes down from ODE.
So a definition of hate crime or bias that exists in another policy is the one that you mean?
Yes.
So who makes the determination that something fits that category? So an interaction happens. Who's the one who has the jurisdiction to decide if hate crime applies to what has taken place, if it's in the context of the school? Is this something that involves the law enforcement? Is it going to them? I'm just trying to understand how we would be deciding that something meets that. And I couldn't find it in there. It doesn't mean it's not there.
So in practice, that would typically be the school official, as well as if it was the crime component would be determined by the police or the district attorney, I guess, for that matter.
Yeah, I was going to add, I'm on the Department DOJ, Oregon DOJ website, and they define it. It's defined in statute, but they expand on that.
And then my last question is, I don't know. I'm going to go to Tina first. I might not have this question, so I'll wait.
All right, Tina, take it.
It's been mentioned that a lot of times our district practices are reflected in our policies, and our practices can vary. I was just curious if we could implement better language around and putting in our policies. I know we're starting to implement practices around trauma-informed care and in regards to discipline. But I would like to see it reflected in our policies, so it's always there. And we always use that lens for trauma-informed care, because we have a lot of our kids coming from a traumatized backgrounds, and I think we could better serve our kids if we always have that language in a policy.
Yeah. Thank you. All right, is there any further, Therese, do you want us to go back to you?
No, I think my question goes beyond the scope of what we need to do here. I'm going to send it in and see if it's even actually a relevant question for discussion.
Yeah, to add to the mix, so cross-referencing with ACB and understanding if there's any, I know Division 22, I'm just looking it up right now, Chapter 581, Division 22 for ODE stipulates about all students belong, every student belongs. So now there's a new statute. Did they update their rules based on the new statute? And if not, should we wait until they do that? So I'm just wondering about the cascading effects of the new ORS.
Right.
So just want to make sure we address that at once for both ACB and for these two.
And that tends to happen after a legislative session.
Yeah, it's like every 2 years we get that. Okay, any other things for the package, JFC and JD? Seeing none, we will go to 11A, and I think that was either Lou or Vince. Correct me if I'm wrong, we're talking about the LBE ARs for public school, charter schools, the one being deleted and new, is that correct?
I don't think so.
No?
Not me.
All right, anyone else? Probably no one.
I think that was the last one.
All right, well, we're done with policy. Is there any other policies for information? I would like to, is none. I would like to make a brief comment. Some people say, why don't you go into operations and talk about things that are not within our capacity? And the reason is we spend lots of time on policy, and that's what we do best. And that's what we should be doing. So I really appreciate this discussion and the deliberate work on policy. Really thank you, team, for providing the thoughtful things that are really important. That's systemic change. And that's our role as board. We need to really be focused on policy while setting goals for operations. So with that, I'll yield for any other comments.
Sammy, do you just mean general comments, like board member comments?
Yeah, sorry, board member comments, yes. And board member comments or any future agenda as well, if you have topics for consideration for future agenda. So Vince, Sarah, Therese, Lou, we'll start with Vince.
So I have two items. The first is appreciation. Thank you very much for pivoting to a virtual meeting or a hybrid meeting. You know, I work for OSBA and I travel for a living, and I got to be on the road for 3 weeks before making the decision to going ahead and switching all my training back to virtual. I have an unvaccinated kiddo at home, and we are trying to be as careful as possible. So very much appreciate being able to be here virtually. The second item I want to share is I want to ask a favor of my colleagues. At OSBA, we are redeveloping our board self-assessment. It's significantly different. It's much more detailed. It focuses, of course, on the things that you're familiar with, but also more things about being a culturally responsive board, trauma-informed board. Also, there is assessment of individual board behaviors or board member behaviors. And so we're at a point where our first assessment is ready to be tested. And I'm asking my colleagues if you would be willing to be guinea pigs and take a survey for me. And this would just be basically similar to what we just did, only about the same length, but it'll look and feel very similar, and you'll get to look at the data. So I saw some thumbs up. Thank you very much. You'll see an email from me in the next couple days, and it's a fairly quick turnaround. Don't have to put a lot of detail. We're just shaking out the platform to make sure it all works correctly. But thank you very much. OSBA very much appreciates your help in developing this tool. It's going to change the way we work with boards. It's really exciting. So, and if you have any feedback on the process, or if thing comes up, if there are problems or things that you notice, please email me your feedback and let us know what didn't work right for you. So thank you all for being willing to test the survey. And thank you all for a really great meeting. This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah. Agreed. Sarah, and then Teresa, and then Lou. Sarah.
Yeah, I have a couple things. One, can we please put on the agenda? I need to be nominated for my position on the OSBA Legislative Policy Committee. My term is up. I need to be to go through that process again. So I would like to ask have on the agenda before the end of September, please, a request for the board to support my position there. I also was struck as we were talking about the renaming, about the student engagement and the community engagement and the learning and just excitement that's happened around that. And it made me almost think we should just every 20 years just rename schools and like come to a point that everybody's saying no, but I just feel like cultures change. Maybe it's somebody else's turn to be named after a school. And then I think this like angst about renaming schools would not be so intense because it's a temporary thing anyway. And, probably not something that's going to happen, but I just have loved the engagement so much that I thought maybe this should just be a process. And 20 years from now, none of us might be around, so somebody else will have to deal with it. So the other thing is, just sort of following up on our conversations about going back to school and the process, the things we need to have in place to be able to send our kids safely to school 5 days a week, and the Swiss cheese model of layers of protection. And as I said about vaccines, you talk to your doctor if you're not certain that's your best source of information. If you're concerned about your kids wearing masks, talk to their pediatrician about wearing masks. I have a kid who trained and set 8 state records in weightlifting wearing a mask. So I'm pretty sure that he's getting oxygen while he's wearing a mask. And what I've seen is that kids, when they understand why they're wearing masks and are not told that it's an imposition, they do pretty well wearing masks. So I think we just need to make sure we're getting good information and that we look at this as something we're doing to support our whole community. That it's not just about protecting me, it's about protecting those kids who can't be vaccinated and their grandparents who live at home, or people like me who are getting chemo who are immunocompromised and are sending kids off to school. That it's bigger than just us. And I also would request that the community, as you talk about masks, you understand that it's an operational decision, although at this point it's a state mandated requirement for schools. But when you're talking to administrators or teachers about this requirement, please be respectful. It's not something that those individual administrators or teachers have a choice about. And we're all in this together. Please treat people with respect and care as we deal with this. Those are my things. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Therese, Lou, and then Shauna. Therese?
Thanks. I want to just ask our community, as they reflect on the work of the Corvallis School District, to take a moment and consider the way in which in our current climate practices and conversations are unfolding in communities all around us. And to some extent, the way they're unfolding, please pay attention to how they're unfolding in our own community as well. But I particularly wanted to just call attention to the recent actions of the Newburgh School District. And I wanted to just say that the reason why we advocated for a transgender student policy is so precisely so that an action like that cannot in a single moment absolutely displace the rights of an entire student group. So I know that occasionally, we have folks who aren't clear about why do you need to call out and specifically identify a group of students and say, these students are protected. Aren't all of our students protected? Aren't all of their rights protected? And theoretically, of course, all of their rights are protected. But we know in practice that that's not the way that really plays out. And the example of the most recent vote by the Newburgh School District to limit expression of LGBTQ students or those for whom Black Lives Matter has personal meaning. I I would encourage you to consider that that is exactly why a policy-making entity such as a school board is responsible to consider the best way to preserve and protect the rights of all learners. And sometimes that very much does mean specifically indicating a group of individuals who are facing a unique concern or threat to their ability to thrive and addressing that. That's what we did with the transgender student policy. And that is, I hope, what this school board will continue to do. We will continue to assess and identify the students for whom the current set of policies or the current practices are not working, and we will address through policy, as we are a policy-making body. We will address through policy the very best way to protect those students. I don't want, this is, for me, I am not making this, I'm not asking the community to consider this because I want to turn the conversation to a particular political trend. I am bringing it up because I want to make sure we understand that our students, it is our responsibility first and foremost to ensure that our students can thrive. The actions of the Newburgh School District compromise the ability of students in their community to be able to do that. And I am grateful that here this board has taken action to add another layer of protection to ensure that that kind of action is not easy to take against the students in our community.
Thank you very much, Therese. Lou and then Shauna.
I just wanted to say, appreciate what you just said, Therese, a lot. That's, I think, really important for the community to understand. And for the community also, if they're confused about what we can and can't do, to ask us instead of make assumptions based on what's going on in other states or other districts. I think it's really healthy to reach out and ask if you're confused about what our role is or why we make the kind of decisions we do. And so I just wanted to encourage that too, for you all to reach out to us as a community. There's a couple things that I had a question. Well, I don't know if it's an agenda item or maybe just a question for the board of how we should think about this, but last year we passed resolutions for Indigenous Peoples Day and Black History Month. And I know there's like Native Heritage Month too, but I'm wondering how we should do that for the other months. So the next one is Hispanic Heritage Month, starting September 15th. And then it goes into Native Heritage Month, and then there's the months that go around. But I'm curious as to how we can do a better job of making those resolutions as needed, or do we do a lump kind of process? And so that's something I would like us to think about and talk about perhaps. And in the meantime, if that's something that we can work on for Hispanic Heritage Month, since it's right around the corner too. In the meantime, we'll figure this out.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh yeah, so that was my question for the rest of the board, if that's something we can work on. And then I wanted to give I'm so glad I wrote notes. I'm getting sleepy. I just wanted to give a shout out to the summer school staff and say you all are amazing. I had 3 students go through summer school for the summer and they all felt so like supported. And I just wanted to give a thank you and shout out for not just the engagement with the students, but in support, but also like the continued focus on making sure that the classrooms were as safe as possible with COVID considerations. And I know when this is just a really short personal story, when I dropped off my youngest to Adams for the summer enrichment, I had that moment where I realized some of these kids haven't been in a school building, including my own, since March of 2020. And some of them probably have not even been to school ever if they were in kindergarten last year. And there was kids crying and sad outside because they were worried and didn't know what to expect. And I think that really showed the importance of that summer enrichment program being expanded to help students transition back. And so I have a lot of gratitude to you all for that. And now here we are, and everybody's all happy in the morning and excited when they're leaving. And so you could see how quick that transition happened. But I think just that initial, I can't imagine, I mean, there's going to be kids in that situation, but I really appreciate the intentionality behind expanding the summer enrichment programs and to give that personal reflective perspective. And I'm sure there's other students and families that experience that as well.
Thank you, Lou. To your first question, I would like to suggest the short-term answer and long-term answer. I'm reminded with a suggestion also from Vince regarding recognition weeks for our employee groups as well. So maybe creating a schedule where we remind ourselves about the timeline would be really good first step. So we are ahead of it and probably have 2 readings rather than 1 reading. So that would be really good step. And I would like to ask for volunteers if you would like to volunteer to help develop that kind of timeline that we could also incorporate with our planning agenda. And I can't see everybody's hands, but I saw Lou. Is that right? And is there any other hands as well? Sarah?
I already have a calendar. I did the homework for this, 2 years ago, something like that. So I'm happy to share with the committee.
All right.
Or
Vince,
group, or whoever's going to do this. I'm happy to share that.
Right on. So Vince, could you share that with Lou and Sarah, and we'll take it from there. I'm not sure if I saw other hands as well. Sorry, my screen is jammed.
I think you saw a lot of hands and you could ask a lot of folks.
Okay, cool.
Sammy, there were so many hands that I think it probably makes sense to have it start with Sarah and Lou and then maybe work its way down, because otherwise it's going to basically be a board meeting.
We're going to start having meeting issues. Yeah.
That's right. So, and please, Vince, share that with them so they can start with that. That's great. For the short-term answer, is there a volunteer who would work on a resolution for the Hispanic Heritage Month for September meeting, and would be able to share the draft in advance, at least a couple of weeks before the meeting? I see Lou's hand is up, and if anyone wants to contribute, Tina as well. Tina and Lou.
Shauna's hand is up. Shauna, is your hand up for this?
All right, so we have Lou, Tina, and Shauna. Lou, Tina, and Shauna, please work on a draft of a resolution, and as soon as you share it with me, I'll share it with the leadership team and staff, and we'll put it on the next business meeting agenda in September. Not the short one, but the long one. Because we have a 15-minute one as well. So thank you, Lou, for mentioning both.
Yeah.
With that, yeah.
I just needed to clarify, like, if we're going to put it in the September one, it's going to be like a 1 read only, probably because of the sensitivity with the time. And so I just wanted to make sure folk were well aware of that in advance.
Thank you. That's right. And is there any objection for that? There will be a 1 read for that, understanding the importance of it and the need for expediency. Awesome. With that, Shauna, you have a comment?
Thanks, Sammy. I was just going to share gratitude and thanks to everybody for welcoming me into this role as a new board member, and just wanted to share my thank you for all of you who are here tonight, virtually as well as in person in the administrative building, as well as to the community. And as I've been learning, and I know I have a lot more learning to do, some of the messages that I've heard from OSBA and others is the value of having a school board that is unified but not uniform, as well as the importance of learning together, openly, transparently, and in community. And those are examples that we are seeing in neighboring school boards, as well as examples that we are not seeing well, and something that I really value about this group. And I know that Corvallis School District, the board, has historically been known for running long and having late school board meetings, but I've also noticed it's because of that learning that's happening very openly, transparently, and together out loud in the spirit of both sharing, giving, and being a part of the community in that way. So I really value that. I'm looking forward to being a part of that. I feel very honored to be here in supporting the amazing educators and leaders we have in this district, as well as serving as a colleague on the board. So thank you, all of you, for welcoming me, and I'm looking forward to the year ahead.
Thank you, Shauna. Is there any further comments? Team, I felt a little bit low this week, especially with other board meetings. I watched 2 board meetings other than today's, and I think that's a lot for 1 week. And I felt a little bit low, but today just filled myself for weeks to come. People are confused, worried, stressed, and rightly so. Maybe angry as well, and that's where we are in a situation where things are rapidly changing. The way of, thank you, Shauna, you summarized this really well. We're working as a really great team, and by we, I don't mean only the 7 board members, but really everybody behind the scenes and on the screen as well. So thank you for your service, dedication, centering the kids. All children, without an exception. When we say all children, we mean every single one of them, and recognizing their uniqueness. So that makes me just very happy. I'm just feeling my heart. Initially, like being tied to remembering other experiences, and now very relaxed knowing that our kids are in good hands. As parents and community, we need to tell the kids it's going to be all right. There are things that we need to do to be careful, but we want to get kids excited about school and motivated that they need to navigate what they need to navigate as a community, but kids will get learning and they'll get the care and connection. And our schools are the best place, in addition to their families, to have that during the day. So really thankful for this work that we're doing. Is there any further comments?
Yeah, I just like to make one too. And that is just, I think, one of the things that's been valuable as we have worked as a cohesive team has been ongoing training. And so as you have the chance to interact with other boards and other board members across the state, and I know that you are doing that right now as we watch what goes on around us, I think the work that you put in early has made a difference. And I would just encourage you to encourage your colleagues and allies on other boards to do the same, because I think that's truly does make a difference. And again, I appreciate you all and where we're headed.
Thank you, Ryan. All right, seeing no any further comments, seeing no further comments, we are adjourned 9:52.